Great to be with you. This is going to be Free Will versus Ownership, Part 14, reading from this booklet written by Dr. Stephen Jones. And let's pick up where we left off. This section is entitled The Pattern of Joseph. Look also at the case of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph's brothers maliciously sold him as a slave, and he was taken to Egypt. One might argue that Judah, by his own free will, came up with the idea of selling Joseph. The rest of the brothers then exercised their free will by agreeing to this plan. The only one who appeared to have no free will in this was Joseph himself. In Egypt, Joseph was soon falsely accused by his master and thrown into prison by his master, Potiphar, who did this by his own free will. Finally, however, he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and was elevated to the highest position in the land under Pharaoh. Eventually, he was reunited with his family and invited them to live in the best part of Egypt. 17 years later, their father died, and Joseph's brothers became afraid that Joseph would now take vengeance upon them for mistreating him according to their own free will. Genesis 49:19 through 21 gives his response. But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for I am in God's place. And as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Here's the key, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph recognized that events had occurred on two levels. Here's the two levels: by man's authority and by God's sovereignty. We got to understand and recognize those two levels. Man operates on God-given authority, and God operates on his unlimited sovereignty. The brothers acted according to their will, thinking it was their own idea to sell Joseph as a slave in Egypt. Joseph certainly recognized the will of his brothers on that lower level and saw that God had worked in their hearts, judging them and correcting them until they repented of their deed. Yet the brothers were responsible only as far as they had authority. Joseph also clearly showed that God was ultimately responsible for it. That is, God had exercised his sovereign will to influence Joseph's brothers to sell him to slave traders. No one is responsible beyond his level of authority or sovereignty. If God was ultimately responsible for the actions of Joseph's brothers, then this proves that God has not relinquished any of his sovereignty. The story of Joseph is a good illustration of how God's sovereignty does not contradict man's authority. Both concepts are true, but we must know the difference between sovereignty and authority, and how authority is limited in its power. For therein lies the key to understanding the real issue. So what we want to understand is that God works all things together for good. Okay, so whatever takes place, whatever someone goes through in this life, whatever befalls them, God is allowing man on the lower level to act according to a certain level or degree of authority that has been given to him. But God on the higher level, who has a plan to bring all things together and knows the end from the beginning, is acting from a higher level of sovereignty. Now, you see, when you understand that, that helps you to be an overcomer and a forgiver and a lover. Because you understand the things that happen to you in this life, in one way, shape, form, or fashion, that God is ultimately in control of it. So Joseph came to understand that what his brothers meant for evil against him, God meant it for good. To put him in position and to put him in a place where he was going to be over all of Egypt, over all of the food. And he was going to be in a place and position where in a time of famine, he was able to feed his brothers, feed his father, feed his family. And he had all the resources. But it was because he submitted to the training and the testing and the placing of God, to the sovereignty of God, that God elevated him. Do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season you will reap if you faint not. If you suffer with him, you will reign with him. The light affliction of this present age is not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in you. But we got to recognize that God on the sovereign level is in control of good and evil. And he's able to work it all together for good. But just know that God is training you, testing you, bringing you through things to finally place you in a position of ultimate authority as a son of God. Because the story of Joseph is a type and shadow of Jesus Christ, and it's also a type and shadow in the story of the sons of God. Because we go through things, people may falsely accuse us, we go through trials, testing, tribulation, but ultimately we're going to be in a position and in a place to bless the whole world, to have the food to give to the world, which would represent the food of the Word, the meat of God, to bless the whole world. And his brothers came and bowed down to him because he had that dream early on as a young man. They came and bowed down. And one day the world is going to bow down to the leadership of the sons and daughters of God. Apostle Paul said the whole creation is groaning and waiting for this manifestation of the sons of God. So just rejoice in the process and know that God's sovereign ultimate plan, if you submit to it, is to put you in a position and place of leadership in his kingdom, to be a king and a priest, and to bless the whole world.